Chapter 12. I can't believe how much this money weighs, I said, my pocket heavy with coins. I've never carried around this much money in my life. Me neither. It makes me feel a little nervous, Augie said, looking over his shoulder anxiously. There was nobody in sight. Everybody else had gone home. We'd stopped at Elise's to treat Garfield again, and then we'd stayed a little longer because her mother wanted us to have an after-school snack. I couldn't help thinking how nice it was to have somebody waiting for you at home, somebody to fix you a snack. I don't see anybody, Augie said. I looked back as well. Up until Augie mentioning it, I hadn't been nervous at all. I just naturally assumed that as long as I was with Augie, I'd be okay, and he'd take care of things. One thing I knew for sure was that I didn't want to run into Jimmy Saunders or any of his friends. $257 is a lot of money, I said. Do you have a safe place to keep it? I've been thinking about it, and I think I have a great place. Where? He asked. I don't want to tell you. You're going to keep it a secret from me? He asked. He sounded hurt. No, you'll know. You'll even help me put it there. It's just that I don't want to tell you about it. I want to show you. And it's safe? Safest place I can think to put over $200, I said. Good, Augie answered, again looking around to see if anybody was following us or could hear what we had said. Now, let's not talk about it, okay? I shrugged. Fine with me. How do you think you did on the science test? Ugh, now there's something else I don't want to talk about. I blew it, he said, shaking his head. You couldn't have. I did. I'm almost positive I did. But you knew all the stuff, all the answers. When I asked you questions at lunch, you couldn't just lose it in 40 minutes. I didn't lose it. I still know the answers. If you asked me right now, I could tell you everything you'd ever want to know about cell biology, he said. I don't understand. You knew it, then forgot it, and now you remember it again? I didn't forget it. I just couldn't get it out on the paper. That's just the way it is. But that doesn't make any sense, I argued. Maybe you're just nervous about it and you really did better than you think you did. I'd rather you were right than me, but I don't think so. We turned the corner to my street and I could see my house up ahead. Come on, tell me where you're going to keep the money, Augie asked. I knew that not knowing bothered him. I'll give you a little hint. Great, just what I need. Another test to see how smart I am. Not. Go ahead and give me a hint. Okay, where do pirates keep their treasure? I asked. Is this like a joke? Like Inuit keep their cash in a snowbank? Augie asked. No, seriously. I don't know. On their ship, under their bed, in a treasure chest, buried with an X marking the spot? Exactly. Exactly what? We're going to bury it, I said. Are you crazy? He exclaimed. We can't just dig a hole in your backyard and bury the money. Who said anything about my backyard? I asked. Or even outside. I took my house key from around my neck. Wait here, I said, putting the key in the lock. Hearing the noise, Candy started to howl, and I could hear her charging down the hall, finally slamming into the door with a loud thud. It's just me, girl, I called out. It's okay, I said as I squeezed in the door. Candy jumped up on me excitedly, her tail wagging, her tongue flicking out, trying to lick my face. Have you been a good girl? I asked, petting her behind the ears, then pushing her back down to the ground. She followed closely behind, bouncing up on me as I walked through the house to the back door and opened it up so she could go outside for a pee. She bounded out the door, getting no more than 2 steps before she spied 3 of my squirrels on the grass in the back corner of the yard. She bellowed loudly as she jumped down the steps and charged across the yard. Candy, leave them alone. The squirrels scurried up the closest tree long before the dog could close the gap between them. Candy, going full speed, tried to stop, but instead crashed headfirst into the trunk. Stupid dog, I muttered. I closed the door and went back to get Augie off the front porch. So have you got it figured out yet? I asked as I let Augie in through the front door. I've got nothing figured out, except that I know if I was a robber, there's no way I'd ever break into your house with that dog around. Candy's a good watchdog, but I've got something even better, I said. Come with me. I went up the stairs. My sister's cat, the only one precious enough to be indoors, came out of her room and stared at me. It was funny how I liked every animal in the whole world except for this one. I opened the door to my room and Augie followed behind. We're going to hide the money in my room, I said. Then what were you talking about when you said you were going to bury it? I am. In here, he asked. I nodded. Where? There, I said, pointing to my alligator's pen. With the alligator. Would you want to put your hand in there? I asked. Not if I wanted to keep it, he admitted. But how? I pulled an old metal cookie tin out from under my bed. We put the money in here, put the lid back on, and then we buried it in the sand in Ollie's pen. You're joking, right? I started to pull the money from my pockets and drop it in the tin. Can you think of any place safer? I asked. Maybe tied around your dog's neck. That's a close second, I admitted as I took out the last of the bills. Empty your pockets and put the money in here, I said, handing him the tin. I leaned over the pen and looked down at Ollie. He was, as he almost always was, in the water. He was sleeping on the bottom, his eyes closed. Off to the side, the light flickering off their scales, a few minnows swam around the rocks. I counted 3. I'd put 6 in there that morning before I'd left for school. I knew where the other 3 were and why Ollie was sleeping. I always felt like sleeping after lunch, too. I reached in and started to scoop away sand from the farthest corner of the pen. The sand was about 4 inches deep, and I needed to clear it right away to the bottom. I began thinking that maybe I should have used some sort of shovel. Occasionally, my sister's cat used a pen as a litter box, and I wasn't crazy about uncovering some treasure that he deposited in there. Of course, the worst thing about that stupid cat using Ollie's pen as a toilet was the possibility that Ollie might use the cat as a snack. Sooner or later, he'd catch the cat with its pants down and leap out and remove a patch of fur and flesh, and then my sister would go ballistic. All the other animals in the house were my pets. Gandalf was hers. He was a special breed, a Russian blue. She'd bought him at a pet store, and he'd cost more than $200. I couldn't believe that anybody would spend that much money on a cat, but that's how she wanted to spend her first paycheck. You could get all the cats you wanted for free by just walking out into the alley and opening up a can of tuna. It's all in there, Augie said, handing me the can. I took it from him and tapped the lid into place. Next, I placed it in the hole I dug. It fit in nicely. I covered it over with a thin layer of sand, spreading the rest out so there wasn't even a hint that anything was buried there. Well, I asked. You're a genius, Augie said. Maybe we should celebrate your genius by going out and playing some road hockey. I don't have time. I have to take care of all the animals, and then we can have a cup of tea while I peel some potatoes for supper, Augie said, completing my sentence. Yeah. Don't you ever have anything else for supper, he asked. I like potatoes. They go with everything, I said. What I didn't say was that it was one of the few things my father knew how to cook. Well, I think I can find better things to do than watch you peel potatoes. I have to get going. I'll see you tomorrow. Try to be on time, okay? I'll try. I stood at the front window staring up the street as far as I could see. Nothing. I turned around and looked at the clock on the wall. It was 5:37. My father was 7 minutes late. That was hardly late at all. At least once a week he was 10 or even 12 minutes late. It wasn't his fault. I knew he tried his best to get home on time. He knew how much I worried. It was just that there were lots of reasons he could be a little late. There was probably a lot of traffic, or maybe there was a stalled car on the highway, or maybe his car had a flat tire, or maybe he had to take care of something at work at the last minute, or there was an accident. Maybe he was in an accident. He was always telling me what a battle zone the highway was. Don't be stupid, I told myself. I looked at the clock again. 5:39, 2 minutes later. I knew he'd be here soon, in a minute or two. There was nothing to worry about. I saw a car at the end of the street. It looked like our car. He was home. Then it turned into a driveway partway up the street. I felt like a punctured balloon, all the hope leaking out of me. I ran back into the kitchen. The potatoes were simmering away on the back burner of the stove, a little puff of steam escaping around the lid. I turned the burner down another notch. The table was already set. I'd put out 3 settings, even though my sister probably wouldn't be home for dinner. Ever since she'd started working as a secretary at that big company downtown, she missed more than half of our suppers. Lots of times she had extra work to do and she had to stay late. Other times she just stayed downtown and took in a movie or ate dinner at a restaurant with her friends. She said she never wanted to eat another boiled potato for the rest of her life. I liked boiled potatoes. I went back to the front window. I was sure he was going to be pulling into the driveway, and he wasn't there. I anxiously looked at the clock again. He was now 12 minutes late. He was almost never that late. I felt my heart start to race and my stomach felt uneasy. Where is he? I asked myself. He should be home by now. I tried to think who I should call or what I should do. There was nobody and nothing. I just had to wait, and it wouldn't be long. I knew that. His car would soon appear at the top of the street. Maybe not the next car, but within the next 3 for sure. Another car turned onto the street. It was little and red and looked nothing like our big battered blue Buick. I was glad it was so different. At least I hadn't gotten my hopes up for nothing. A second car pulled onto the street. Maybe it could be it wasn't him. That meant that he had to be the next one. He had to be. If it wasn't him, then what had happened to him? He's okay, I shouted. Candy jumped up from the floor where she'd been sleeping, disturbed by my outburst. She came over to me, wagging her tail. It's okay, girl, I said quietly, reaching down to pat her head. He'll be here soon. You have nothing to worry about. Candy seemed convinced. She flopped down to the floor and turned over on her back with her paws in the air. No matter what happens, girl, you know I'll always be here to take care of you, I said. I bent down and scratched her tummy. Sometimes I thought how easy it would be to be a dog. Nothing to worry about, nothing to think about. I started to think things through. What would I do if he didn't come home? If he never came home? If he was dead, then it was just Janice and me. She was old enough to take care of herself, but she wasn't old enough to take care of me, even if she wanted to. I figured I'd stay until after the funeral. I never got to go to my mother's because I was too young. And then right after that, I'd leave. I had my sleeping bag and the tent I bought last summer, and I could fill my knapsack with things, and then just get on the bike and go. Candy would come with me, and we would find a place to pitch the tent. There was a clearing in the middle of the woods where practically nobody ever went. We could live there, and I could go to school and get some sort of job so I could earn some money to buy food, and I heard the sound of tires against gravel. I stood up and looked at the window in time to see my father's car pull to a stop in our driveway. He was home. I quickly moved away from the window. My father said he didn't like me to stand there at the window worrying, just because he was a few minutes late. Anyway, I had things to take care of. I had to drain the potatoes and put out the meat and pour us something to drink, and thank you, God, thank you.